Honestly, I'm surprised I'm talking about this album only a month after it released. I thought I'd wait a little bit, let myself process this album a bit more. Discussion up to this point, while mixed, was respectful. Some people saw Hardy's album as a con, others saw it as super cool and fresh. I could put this video off. People are calm about it, and critically, it was already fading into surprising obscurity, even if all the white girls in the world were spamming red just because it had Wallen on it. And then Melon being Melon dropped arguably his most infamous country music review since Golden Hour. Suddenly the talking points are, Hardy is stereotyping Southern people. No, you idiot, that was Fantano. Clearly anyone criticizing the album doesn't get Hardy or get country. So now, I'm back to talk about this record and point out the problems that are getting drowned out by senseless Melon and Hardy dick riders. I'm someone who'd I'd say gets Hardy. I've listened to all his records, his side projects, his EPs, even his co-writes with others. I understand this man's music better than this guy who just glared at an album, thought about it for 5 minutes, and then just did his review. I'm also not someone who hates this record. I think there's still some genuine worth to it. The balladry is mostly excellent, and its rock elements have more authenticity in its styling than Hardy arguably ever has. What I am here to tell you is that this record, for all its controversial nature, all its parody angles, all of its anti-Nashville / establishment sentiment, is a load of baloney. It is not a record you should look for quality anti-industry messages, nor is it a record you should look for quality and substantive country music parody. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate this record in the traditional sense that the music is utterly garbage. I'm not of that opinion at all. I hate it because what it's trying to spoon feed me with its remarks is bullshit. After being able to better understand this record without the fear of a review deadline, I can finally go into detail as to why these specific aspects of this album are nothing but a farce, and more so, a failure. Part 1. Hardy Today. So Hardy at this point has well established himself as the premier bro guy in today's country music world. People look at him under the guise of this guy who truly speaks for Southerners, who gets their lifestyle and presents it in creative yet respectful ways. And at least in my opinion, that sentiment holds true most of the time. His debut album Rock is one of the more inventive with what is declared quote-unquote generic subject matter, with original stories that ring true emotionally and lyrically. Now, are these generic subject matters? I'm not at liberty to say because I'm not a Southerner. I'm not going to say Hardy stereotypes people, I'm not going to say he debunks them, because that's not my place. My policy these days is to consider all subject matter, especially in country music, 100% authentic, unless proven otherwise like a Kid Rock scenario. And more so go into music judging the execution of these themes, rather than mock the themes themselves. It allows for more substantive discussion of this music. And under this hypothesis, when I look at a Rock, I think it holds up. With songs like One Beer, Boots, Give Heaven Some Hell, and even unapologetically country as hell. They're very witty, they tell stories, not only in a fresh perspective, but have well-detailed writing. Hardy's reputation up to this point isn't a false narrative perpetuated by the media and YouTubers. It's one widely held, myself included. The general idea here is that before this new album, Hardy is what many claim to be. A cool figure to admire in the realm of country, and offers something arguably no one else does in a mainstream context. So now that we get the Hardy of the past, we need to take a look at the Hardy of the present. Part 2. Hardy the anti-radio, radio-loving Crusader. So the whole crux of the concept of this record is already well known, but in case you don't know, it's to provide a stark contrast and display this feud in Hardy's soul. A country-loving fun guy, and this out-there chaotic badass who doesn't care what people think. The doubly named Mockingbird and the Crow. The general gist of it is, Hardy may play the radio game, but he's good at what he does. And meanwhile, he's gonna be this out-there, don't-give-a-fuck guy who makes the craziest music for a specific appeal. On paper, this is a novel concept, Hardy being meta about himself, the industry, while also mapping out his future. If you look at this record on the basic surface level, you're probably not going to find a problem with this concept and possibly really enjoy it. But here's the thing, the closer you look, and the more you think about it, it becomes more hypocritical, more confusing, and ultimately negatively connotating towards how Hardy decides to present himself on the record. An acquaintance of mine, Joe, helped me reach this conclusion, and I'm leaving their blog which will further go into this hypothetical in detail. But the apparent issues with this record, while vast and too long to explain in an appropriately length video, can be narrowed down to 4 central songs: Sold Out, Here Lies Country Music, The Mockingbird and the Crow, and Radio Song. I'm going to do my best to go into detail in how these central songs tear Hardy's narrative and ambition apart. Starting with Sold Out, the very first single released off the album. The general basis of this song is to proclaim Hardy isn't a sellout, right? How he's selling out venues, but he never will. Not a problem, right? Out of context, you'd be correct. But the problem in further detail lies in the implication of this song in the context of the entire album. That everything, all of the music on this album, is not sellout music. You're not supposed to look at any of these songs and think, ew, Hardy sold out? Lame. And this fundamentally destroys much of what Hardy later does in the record. The second song I'm going to bring up is The Mockingbird and the Crow, a song designed as both the transitional period and the centerpiece of the entire record, defining who the true Hardy is. A guy who makes mocking-like songs in terms of repetitive nature in both the lyrical and musical concepts, and a guy who's breaking rules and barriers, a break-it kind of guy, if you will. And in doing so, you put into question the entire worth of the first half of the album. Am I supposed to respect a bunch of songs you yourself are calling like other songs you've heard? We can debate all you want on whether or not they're good. In my case, a few of them very much are. But you're negatively connotating that they aren't worth much with just the first half of the song. Third song, Here Lies Country Music. If the previous one just makes you question the worth of the Mockingbird record, it's this one that just utterly ruins it. There seems to be this confusion in exactly what is going on with it. Some think Hardy is saying country music is dead, but that's not what he's saying. It's basically a dream or dark foreshadow of events that can possibly take place. That country is going to die from hollow plastic music that isn't authentic to what country is. And he's right. I agree with that sentiment. But there's 2 issues with this. Who is singing this song and what album it's on? Because Hardy's intent of this song is to show that he isn't like the other artists who are ruining country. He's the opposite. He's doing country justice. But when the following song is saying, I make generic redneck music, how am I supposed to take this song seriously? Are you a part of the problem, or are you a solution? You're saying in Here Lies Country Music that country could die from generic music from other people, while admitting you've done it yourself. Even if I didn't call it hypocritical, these are 2 stances that absolutely do not connect at all. Because Hardy doesn't express guilt for this, he doesn't say I've made mistakes. In fact, he does the exact opposite and has the gall to parody the genre with the next song I'm talking about. Radio Song, as mildly entertaining as it initially was for me, yeah, this song has become a stinker. Making fun of radio-friendly music, which is novel initially, but here's the issue. Every single song in here says something completely contradictory about Hardy's nature. And not in the fascinating sense, but in the please for the love of God make actual sense. The Fantano review, as flawed, misguided, and arguably offensive as it was, brought this one specific point that highlights what I'm about to get into.
But here's the thing, these silly, kind of listener-friendly country sounds that he's playing with here sound just like the country ballads on the front end of the record. How can you be here making fun of this sound when you were literally unironically producing exactly this just earlier on the album in the first half?
Because there isn't really any difference. If you were to go into this on a compositional level, the similarities are as clear as day. So we have Sold Out, which implies to take everything at face value seriously. We have The Mockingbird and the Crow that puts into question the first half of the record. Here Lies Country Music, which he's Hardy attempting to elevate himself as above the people ruining country music in his eyes. And Radio Song sounding just like the music we're supposed to take seriously, which Hardy in this instance is trying to make fun of. You see? The problem here? How can you make fun of something that sounds just like what you make, which you claim ruins the genre, while simultaneously telling me to take it seriously because it isn't sellout music? I wouldn't be this stressed out if the narrative was at least coherent, because inevitably, Hardy takes no stand at all. I'm just left confused by it. Hardy's resolve, the message he wants to leave me with, doesn't exist because there is no resolve. We never get to see Hardy acknowledge this blatant hypocrisy, and if Radio Song is supposed to be that, it is an awful conclusion to that scene. And keep in mind, I didn't even bring up Hardy's writing cuts for people like Chris Lane, Jason Aldean, or Cole Swindell. If I wanted to do that, it would not be a pretty picture. Now, this would be a good place to end this discussion. I've finally said my piece of this record, but I want to go into Radio Song's further failure. Not just in the narrative failure, but its parody one. Another theme of this record is parody. It wants to make fun of country, and in all honesty, Radio Song is one of the most shallow and least substantive ways the genre has ever seen. We already went into why it narratively fails to accomplish anything, but it's arguably such a lowbrow experience in humor and insider perspective of how Nashville truly operates. Think how meta humor seems to be on the rise these days with shows like She-Hulk, or, I can't believe I'm saying this, Velma. The entire crux of the joke is just Hardy playing out in his perspective generic Radio Song music, which he doesn't do, by the way, and then Jeremy McKinnon yelling the F word, which makes the song anti-radio. That's it. Thanks for coming, chuckle fucks. It is such a lowbrow humor response on the level of fart illumination jokes. It doesn't get into how the industry operates, let alone in a cheeky manner. We're just expected to go along with it because, oh, it sounds like this song. That's funny. Now, there's 3 specific instances I want to point out which get the parody angle right. First up, Zach Bryan's If She Wants a Cowboy. This is an anti-establishment song. I've gone into greater detail in the past, so I'll link it in the description if you want more than this brief summary. Basically, Zach uses an already humorous story and masquerades it for a story on how the industry changes people into something they're not. The song not only works in this specific context, but it works in another, because it represents what Zach isn't. He didn't need to play the Nashville game and have a team of marketers change everything about him. He's one of the most real country superstars and the most raw in a very long time. It establishes an authentic relation to the parody, which Radio Song doesn't. Because like I said, with the flip-flopping nature, Hardy is essentially parodying himself, who he simultaneously is trying to be taken seriously. A rebuttal to his own existence, essentially. Next up, the Hot Country Nights' entire album. This record is severely underrated and it parodies a variety of things, most of which are subtle or over the top. There's parodies of 90s radio singles tastefully done. There's a whole parody where they keep modulating the key because country was stereotypically known for doing that. Hence this famous line. Y'all dumb motherfuckers want a key change. To bullshit nationalism songs. And I could get into the horny aspect of it all, but we'd be here all day. Many of the songs here go into detail with what I'm talking about. They're creative and have more to say than just, ha ha, radio sucks. Ha ha, I said the F word. And finally, the crown jewel I'm about to tell you about, the massively underrated, 3-minute positive, not too up-tempo country love song by Alan Jackson. This is literally the same song done right. It sounds amazing, it keeps up with Alan's reputation of fatherly dad joke vibes, it is so well written and fits into the context of what it's parodying so well. Keep in mind, this was recorded in the year of 2000, with the new wave of contemporary quote-unquote country was being sold. This was Alan's bold rebuttal to that. It doesn't contradict anything about Alan. It is well in the know of the genre's problems, brilliantly alternating from Alan's up-tempo single nature to the styling of what he's talking about so smoothly. It is everything Radio Song wishes it could be. Moral of the story, moral of this video, and moral of my entire opinion of Hardy's album, you can't criticize, you can't parody, or make fun of something you were, still are, and plan to be a part of. You're not in on the joke, you're out. Specifically, a sellout.